On today's show, Alperen Sengun makes Eurobasket history and Turkiye stays undefeated, beating Estonia, improving to 4-0 in group stage play. We're going to break it all down for you coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ne haber ve hoş geldiniz. What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets and Turkiye basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Estonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down Turkiye's 20-point victory over Estonia, improving to 4-0 in Eurobasket group stage play, remaining undefeated. We'll talk a little bit about Alperen Sengun making some Eurobasket history in this game with his final stat line. We'll also get into why this game was a lot harder than the finals box score would have you imagine. Shout out to, hats off to Estonia. It was a tough win for Turkiye, even though the final box score, and even if you were to parse through the play-by-play, I would argue this might have been the toughest opponent that Turkiye has had to play so far through these first four games. We'll talk about some of the individual performances across the board. A lot of contributors in this game. Ersan Osmani was really solid again. Cedi Osman, Seamus Hazer was great. Shane Larkin was solid. But Adem Bona was the best player not named Alperen Sengun on the floor for Turkiye. We're going to talk about his impact in this game. A lot to get to on today's show. First, I want to let you know that the episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your very first year. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Let's start with the man in the middle, Alperen Sengun, who has continued to have himself just a series of impressive performances here in Eurobasket in this game. 21 points on 8 of 13 shooting overall. He was 6 of 10 inside the arc, 2 of 3 from downtown, hitting a couple threes. And I'm going to throw away that third one. He was really 2 of 2 because that third one he had to heave up at the end of a late clock situation. So it wasn't taking a three within the rhythm and flow of the offense, which is when he takes them confidently within rhythm, feels pretty good. He was also 3 of 3 at the charity stripe. So solid efficiency across the board for Alp to go with that 21 points. He also had 8 rebounds, 5 assists, had a steal, had a block, was a plus 22 in his 32 minutes of run. And here's where the history kicks in. Alperen Sengun is the first player to have more than 20 points, more than 5 rebounds, and more than 5 assists in 3 consecutive Eurobasket games over the past 30 years. It's been 30 years. That's kind of crazy, honestly. The fact that Sengun has been that dominant through this stretch of Eurobasket, there's a pretty strong chance that he walks away as the Eurobasket MVP, assuming that Turkiye is able to place, in some capacity with a medal somewhere down the line. He's been that good. He's one of the leading scorers. He's top 3 in assists. He's top 5 in rebounds. He's up there near the top in pretty much every major statistical category. And that continued on in this game against Estonia, despite the fact that this was arguably the most physical defense that Sengun and Turkiye have faced in the tournament so far. I want to give a lot of credit to Estonia. And in particular, the dude on Estonia, what was his name? Matthias Toss. He was their big, and he was tasked with trying to handle Alperen Sengun. And, Sengun was still able to ultimately get his, but this felt like the most that Sengun had to really work past the defender and past, a defensive collective. I mean, hell, at one point in this game, Estonia threw all 5 dudes at Sengun. Like, I kid you not, there was literally a possession. Sengun wound up not making the shot. He didn't really have anywhere else he could go with it. Like, everybody was draped around him. But, like, all 5 Estonian defenders were just wrapped around Sengun on one play. It was kind of ridiculous to see. But Sengun was out there, doing some really creative stuff. He had a no-look nutmeg through his defender's legs to Cedi Osman, who unfortunately wasn't really ready for the pass, and he missed the point-blank shot. It was the first time. Wouldn't be the last time that Cedi Osman missed a beautifully served-up assist from Alperen Sengun. I really wish there was a website somewhere. If you know of one, tell me, that tracks Eurobasket potential assists, because Alp finished this game with the 5 assists in this one. I feel like he could have easily had 3 or 4 more assists had his teammates just converted on these passes. Now, I will say that the nutmeg one, Cedi did get sent to the free throw line and he made the first free throw. So Sengun did get credit for that assist because of the FIBA Eurobasket rules with assists and fouls and free throws and all that good stuff. But elsewhere, I mean, I'll get into the actual game flow. One thing that really stood out to me in this one, though, was, Estonia never really rolled over. They could have just given up, rolled over. It was basically a 20-point lead, more or less, most of the way, like from halftime then on. But they kept cutting back into it. They kept cutting the lead down to, 14, 13, 12. A couple different times they got it down to 12. And each time it felt like Turkiye had a good response, and in particular, Sengun. Whether it was, he had a ridiculous turnaround and one fadeaway near the end of the third quarter where he just powered up through his defender's arms. The guy reached in, clawed at the ball. He powers up through the contact and still managed to flip the ball up towards the rim, kiss it off the glass. Had an and one opportunity there. Getting different guys looks, knocking down his own threes late in the game, manufacturing opportunities for his teammates. It felt like every time Estonia went on a run, Sengun, predominantly Sengun, but elsewhere, right? Whether it was Cedi, whether it was Adem Bona, Turkiye had a response each and every time that Estonia went on a run. And for Sengun in particular, that's what you want to see out of your star player. You want them to be able to have that calming effect on everybody else, right? You want your role players, you want your other guys on the floor to feel confident when the ball is in the hands of your best player, and that with pretty much absolute certainty that as long as you execute, right, as long as you do the right things with your star player, that he's going to get you, a high quality look. He's either going to score the ball himself or draw a foul or, draw enough defensive attention that you're going to generate and manufacture a high quality shot. And it kind of felt like this was Sengun, when he needed to pull the strings, whether he needed to be a scorer in this game and be more aggressive, whether he used that scoring gravity and, drew a second or even a third defender, paint touch, kick out for 3. It really felt like Turkiye's offense was running like a well-oiled machine in this one in particular. As a team, they shot the lights out of the ball again, 41.7% from downtown, 10 of 24. They shared the basketball really well in this one. Again, a lot of it running through Sengun, getting that paint touch and then kicking it back out. The inside out play was really on point in this game. And the cutting, that was another big thing that stood out in this one, is this game felt like maybe the best game of the 4 so far in group stage play for Turkiye and the different players cutting off the wings, right? Cutting in that little 45-degree cut, that 45 angle cut, from the opposite side of the court. So Sengun's posting up. You have a guy standing on the weak side, kind of in the slot, free throw line extended area, and then cutting in when the defense turns their back, when they're not paying attention. And those turned into some really, really good opportunities for Turkiye throughout the game. So really impressed with Sengun and his continued stretch of Eurobasket dominance. And he's really, really going to be put to the test in Wednesday's matchup against Serbia. Both teams undefeated through group stage play. And this will be this final game between Serbia and Turkiye will be the deciding factor in the seeding going into the knockout stage of Eurobasket. It could be the difference between Turkiye facing Sweden, a much easier opponent, versus having to face one of Lithuania or Finland potentially out of Group B. So we're going to be talking about that and kind of previewing the matchup with Serbia a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, I want to talk about Adem Bona, who had a huge game for Turkiye. His impact on both sides of the court was undeniable. Plus, a little bit of a lineup quirk that I feel like Coach Ataman needs to take a look at and resolve before we get to the knockout stage of the tournament. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Look, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. Nobody wants to do that. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your smartphone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you're put off organizing your finances, I know I am, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you so you can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally, feel in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. Look, when I first started using Monarch, I was embarrassed at how much I was spending on food, like just dining out at restaurants, getting fast food, ordering carry out, delivery, using the courier services, all of it, right? Now I budget smarter and I save more. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets and Eurobasket Turkiye basketball. Let's continue the conversation here. And I want to hammer home and reiterate really quickly, because I don't think I may have glossed a little bit too quickly past it. The whole 3 straight games, 25-5 for Sengun stat line, right? Like Jokic hasn't even done that. I just want to point that out really quickly, right? So that's pretty remarkable that Sengun has accomplished that at such a young age. Hopefully he continues to build on that moving forward. But want to shift gears here and talk a little bit about the game itself, as well as some of the other key contributors for Turkiye in this one. First off, Estonia was good. Like I was really kind of taken aback and impressed with, first off, the defense and their physicality. And that was the biggest thing that stood out about Estonia, is they played Turkiye probably the most physically that any of the 4 teams have so far to this point. And they kind of needed to, because here was the kind of the crux of the issue, is that Turkiye actually has real legitimate bigs, right? Like Alpi is a legitimate big. Osmani, even though he's more of an old school 4, he's not the biggest, most muscular, physically strong big that Turkiye has. He's long and tall, right? He's a big. Adem Bona, massive, strong, super athlete, right? Yurt7, mountain of a man. Estonia had nothing for these guys, right? Their biggest big that they were putting out there was the dude I complimented earlier, Tas, and he was flat out struggling. Estonia was getting absolutely demolished on the glass. It was a 26-11 rebound advantage at halftime. Estonia just couldn't close out defensive possession strong. There were multiple second chance opportunities being given up to Turkiye. And then, the size and the physicality really wore them down as the game progressed. And I also think their directive, right, the way that they were being coached to be extra physical, to try and make up for their lack of size, for their lack of length, was it kind of played against them, because they got in foul trouble early in this game. They were in the bonus for a big chunk of that first quarter, and it led to Turkiye having a massive free throw advantage early on in this game. They went to the free throw line 14 times in the first quarter, hit 10 of them. So 10 of 14 at the charity stripe after one, where they were also 3 of 3 on the inside. And then they were 3 of 7 from 3-point land after the first quarter. So Turkiye was just, it was about as good of a first quarter as you could hope for. The one area of this game and this is a major glaring weakness, and it's not the first time that we've seen this, but it's something that they need to figure out, they need to clean up. And again, credit to Estonia for the defense that led to some of these moments, but the number of turnovers on attempted post-entry passes was alarming from Turkiye. Like, it was bad. I mean, just in the first quarter alone, they had like, I don't know, 3 or 4 turnovers off entry passes alone. I don't know what they finished the game with. I have specifically, I think I have 6 or 7 written about in my notes. And that's an obscene amount of turnovers just off of entry passes into the post. That's not, other turnovers. It's not cross-court passes. That's not, ball dribbles off your foot, kind of whatever, carelessly. These are just entry passes, and they had 6 or 7 turnovers off just entry passes alone. When your best player is a post player like Alperen Sengun, I would hope that the team could be a significantly better team when it comes to making some of those entry passes. A lot of them were just lazy. Like, one of them, Shane Larkin, was dribbling up the floor, and he tried to get the ball to Sengun from like half court. He like whips like a bounce pass and completely telegraphs it. And Sengun's defender had the ability to then jump out from behind Sengun and get a fingertip on the pass and deflect it. Like, those are just silly mistakes. And against a team like Estonia, fine. Might not be, the end of the world. But against a team as good as Serbia on Wednesday, like, you can't have silly mistakes like that. You can't not be able to get the ball in to your best player down low to run your sets, and instead settling for like hezzy tween ISOs out on the perimeter, like, step back threes or long twos. And like, it's okay when some of those go in, but it's like it's bad process, right? If the shot goes in, it doesn't make it a good possession, right? It can be a bad possession, the shot, and the ball can still wind up in the hoop, right? And you're like, well, okay, it was a bad possession, but I made the shot, cool, right? And sometimes you need those bailout shots, sure. But this was just too many times, I felt like, in one given game to not be able to get the ball to your best player. But outside of that, I mean, the early turnovers were an issue, and it popped up a few more times throughout the game, but it wasn't ever a point that, like, Estonia wasn't ever able to really build off of generating those turnovers. Credit to Turkiye's defense. They were really solid. Again, the size and physicality on the inside of those Turkish bigs really, kind of prevented Estonia from getting anything easy or super easy at the rim. They were really reliant on the 3-ball, it felt like, in this game. The only quarter where they outscored Turkiye was the third period, and it was only 22-19. So it's the only quarter that Turkiye lost. Elsewhere, though, I mean, I want to highlight just how good Adem Bona was in this game, because my goodness, this was by far his best game of the tournament so far. He finished the night with 12 points on 6 of 7 shooting. He had 4 rebounds, and he had a couple steals and a couple just monster blocks. It should have been 3 blocks in the box score. He had one that was ruled a foul, and on the replays, it looked pretty clean. Like, I have it in my notes right here, all caps. That was a clean block on toss by Adem Bona. Are you kidding me? Is what I wrote in the notes. But he made up for it a few moments later with like a legitimate block that actually counted. And maybe my favorite play of the whole game was later in this one. I don't know if it was the third quarter or the fourth quarter yet. I think it was late third quarter. Bona got a poke check as the ball handler was coming around a pick and roll set, got the poke check. Seamus recovered it and is driving in transition, has the defender right in front of him, and dishes it back to Bona, who went up for a just colossal slam at the rim. Really liked his minutes in this game. He felt really impactful, and so much so that Adem went out of his way to kind of, adjust the rotation a little bit and to give Bona more playing time in this game. He wound up getting 17 minutes of run in this one, as opposed to, previous games he's gotten not even in the double digits in a couple of them, right? He's been in the single digits as far as his minutes played. So it was great to see him, really kind of spread his wings and have some opportunity and have more opportunity to play alongside Alperen Sengun. And that's going to be the next point that I want to bring up here. Want to talk about how the rotation feels a little clunky right now with how Adem Bona is trying to fit certain guys in. Want to share some thoughts on that, as well as preview the matchup with Serbia and take a look at the Eurobasket standings. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets and Locked On Turkiye, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets and Eurobasket basketball. Okay, so I wanted to tee this up, and I wanted to do it all in segment 2, and I wound up talking for too long, so my bad. But, Adem Bona has such a unique skill set, one that isn't replicated elsewhere on the Turkish roster. And it really feels like he's a weapon that is being, I guess, at times underutilized by Adem. And I noticed this in the minutes where Bona was out there with Yurtseven, which wasn't that long. Yurtseven only got 4 minutes in this game. And I'm glad, because he went back to not being great. But I do feel, first off, I do feel like Yurtseven will have his time to shine in certain matchups, right? Like against Jokic, you're going to need to wear Jokic down with multiple bigs. Against potentially Jonas Valanciunas, same kind of concept, right? You want those fresh legs and that big body and that size, that strength to really wear down those other, marquee bigs that Turkiye might have to face down the line, or will have to face at least one more time with Serbia on Wednesday. But the thing that I noticed was when Bona and Yurtseven are out there together, nobody guards either of them when they're out of the three-point line. They just don't. And predominantly, right, like Bona's the one who gets thrown to go like, hey, go stand in the corner or whatever, while Yurtseven is either in the dunker spot or maybe setting a screen. And then if Bona's spaced all the way out to the perimeter, his defender literally just ignores him. Like he's all the way sagged back into the paint, and it really messes up the spacing for Turkiye. And I hated witnessing it. And then as soon as Sengun comes back in the game, right, it's like, oh, okay, great. Now Bona can go play in the dunker spot. You have Sengun in the middle of the floor, and suddenly there's a lot more threatening actions happening. And part of that is because I guess Yurtseven doesn't have the court vision from the middle of the floor to be trusted to make those passes and break down the defense to allow Bona to sit in the dunker spot, right? So they're having Yurtseven set the screen, but Bona's way out of the picture. It's problematic. I would love it, and hopefully this is something that the Turkish coaching staff looks back at and sees on film and maybe adjusts moving forward. But it kind of feels like you could almost perfectly set things up to where you sub out Osmani a little bit sooner for Adem Bona, and then whenever you're ready to bring Yurtseven in, then you switch back to Osmani to give Yurtseven the space to really operate in the middle. Because unfortunately, just the pairing of Yurtseven and Bona, it feels good defensively because there's a ton of size out there. There's rebounding. You have like rim protection. It's nice. Offensively, it leaves a lot to be desired, and it puts a lot of pressure on the guards, whether it's Larkin or Hazer or Jetty or Sipahi. It puts pressure on all those guys to be able to sometimes create something out of nothing on the perimeter. Talked about those like hezzy tweens, step back, whatever. Like those possessions don't look great. Like it's okay when the shot goes in, but they don't feel great. And so this feels like a way to maybe balance things out, because you can play Sengun with any other big on the roster. All 4 of the other bigs can all be paired with Sengun, but you can't pair all of the other bigs with one another, right? Because their skill sets don't always complement. And it feels like Yurtseven and Bona's skill sets don't really complement each other to the degree that you would want it, that they can be complementary if you were to replace, say, Bona with Osmani to provide that floor spacing. That feels like probably the best complement to have out there with Yurtseven. And so if Adem Bona just tweaked the rotations a little bit to give Bona a little bit more time with Sengun, and then have Osmani be ready to check in or come in at the same time or stay in the game at the same time with Yurtseven, then you can alleviate some of that poor floor spacing and open up those driving lanes for guys like Larkin, like Hazer, like Jetty, all of that stuff. That was the final point that I wanted to make. I don't think there was anything really else, to get into from the actual game. Just double checking my notes here, other than Estonia kept making pushes for it, man. Into the third, top of the fourth, they really pushed for it, and they cut it down to 12 a couple times. And credit to Turkiye, they had a response every time. All right, let's take a look really quickly at Team Serbia, because this is going to be the matchup of Eurobasket. Like, these are two undefeated teams. This is the favorite to place gold and win it all in Serbia. And this is Turkiye, who's, I think, probably surprised some people with how good they've looked, their roster depth, how much of a leap forward Alperen Sengun feels like he's really taken. But for Serbia, they're not at full strength, and that's an important element here to consider. Bogdan Bogdanovic has been ruled out for the remainder of Eurobasket. He suffered a hamstring strain, I apologize, a ruptured hamstring muscle. Suffered it in, I believe it was either the second or third group stage game for Team Serbia. So they've been without basically what is their second best player for these last couple games, and they've looked significantly weaker because of it. They're still not like they're not going to be an easy out regardless. They've got the best player on the planet in Nikola Jokic. And he has yet to really, like, he had that 39-point outing the other day, and it felt like they needed every single one of those points to be able to win. Obviously Jokic has that gear that he can drop into, but Serbia is significantly less scary now that you know that their second best player is out for the rest of the tournament. They're going to be leaning on Nikola Jovic a lot in that starting lineup to help kind of buoy things. They've also leaned on, who's this guy? Alexa Avramovic, I believe. He's been kind of big for them in their starting guard rotation. And the other guy in their front court, Filip Petrusev. There we go. He's been good for them as well. Now, the benefit for Turkiye is, I was watching Serbia beat up on Czechia, and it was ugly. And it's because Czechia didn't have the size to really deal with the length and size of Serbia's front court, with Petrusev playing off of Jokic at the 4 spot for Serbia. That's where Turkiye really has a chance with Osmani should be able to match up with Petrusev and be able to at least keep him from getting whatever he wants down low. And that puts a pretty tall order on Alperen Sengun to be able to handle Jokic, not fully by himself, right? We'll see what kind of scheme Adem Bona decides to throw out there, whether he trusts Alpi in single coverage, tells everybody else to stay home, and subscribes to just, hey, let Jokic get his, don't let everybody else get involved, right? We've seen Ime Udoka use that same strategy on Jokic when he's playing for the Nuggets, right? Is if you let Jokic just try to fight for his, yeah, he might burn you for 35 or 40 or even 50, but he's going to gas out as the game wears on. He's not going to have the energy to get all the way to the end. And for Turkiye, if you can throw Sengun at him, you can throw Yurtseven at him, you can throw Bona on him for a little bit. Hell, you might even throw out Sertac Shanli for a little bit, just to give a different look, right? A more skilled, kind of crafty defender to keep up with all of Jokic's tricks, right? There's so many different ways that they can try to slow him down. And it really does feel like, Team Serbia, one of the things that made them kind of a little bit deadlier is they had Bogdan Bogdanovic to be able to carry those non-Jokic minutes, right? Where Jokic would sit, Bogdanovic would take over and run the offense, and that was solid, right? They could stagger those two guys and be just fine. Without Bogdanovic, they're going to have to really rely on Jovic and the other perimeter creators to try and get something going. And I feel like that's a significantly weaker proposition, right? It suddenly feels like Serbia is damageable because they don't have two elite offensive talents, because Bogdanovic is an elite offensive talent in his own right? He's not a star level player, right? But he's like a notch below kind of player as far as like the star outlines go, like one notch right below all-star caliber, where, had his career turned out a little bit differently, played for a couple different teams, maybe Bogdanovic could have been an all-star at some point in his career with his production. He's kind of like the Eric Gordon special, if you will. And in that right, losing him is a really significant loss for Serbia. I think this is going to be a huge test for Sengun, and this could be the game. Look, I'm not going to put the cart ahead of the horse, but with how good Sengun has been playing, and with everything riding on this game, the final of the group stage, to decide who's essentially the 1 seed versus the 2 seed, who gets the better matchup in the next round, an easier opponent to start off the tournament, right? That's going to be pretty significant. this marquee matchup between Sengun and Jokic, Joker versus baby Joker, right? Like, this has the chance to really be kind of a statement game from Alperen Sengun. And if he goes out there and puts up, you know, a strong Sengun-esque stat line, right? Like something like 25, 7 and 7, like a monster kind of game, right? If he's able to do that, I forgot the word for monster already in Turkish. I'm so sorry. I want to say it so bad, but I also don't want to have to like stop what I'm doing and Google it. I guess I could have just done that. But also, look, I want to say this right now. If Turkiye wins the gold medal, I will do the whole show introduction in Turkish. I will study and I will learn and I will do the whole show intro minus the ads in Turkish. Just the intro though. Because that part I have like rehearsed and down pat in English. But anyways, sorry, I had to get off of my little Turkish sidebar. Look, if Sengun is able to really take it to Jokic in this matchup with Serbia, it has the chance to be a statement game, right? I think that Sengun he's become a much more like household name, right? He had his first All-Star selection, all of that, right? Rockets were the 2 seed. They started getting some more national media respect. They're on a ton of nationally televised games this season, right? Tied for, it was 5th most in the NBA this season for nationally televised events. This is all awesome, right? And Sengun's going to continue to carve out that niche where he can be like, people are like, oh yeah, Alperen Sengun, Alp, oh man, I love him, right? Like you want that kind of recognition for your star players. If he takes it to Jokic and beats Jokic in this kind of a game, that could be the thing that really blows up and he's able to ride into the season like this wave of just momentum into the season, right? Think about that. And you know, I know this is just the end of group stage, so it's not it's not a medal game. It's not, you know, so there's going to be higher stakes further down the line, but this could be the game that puts everybody on notice. Like, oh, Alperen Sengun is really moving like that this season, right? Like he's coming in different, right? He's stepping into his own territory as a Nikola Jokic, as a Luka Doncic, right? Where he is one of the most notable European players in the NBA, right? I don't know if right now Alpi is clearly top 5. I don't know doing top 5 off the top of my head. Like there's those two, then there's Giannis. I guess Alpi is probably already top 5. I think so, but I'm doing that without like a ton of information in front of me. But you want to start to see him mentioned in the same breath as those guys, and not just like, oh, he's a poor man's Jokic, or oh, he's baby Jokic. You want to hear Sengun mentioned with the Lukas and the Jokic's and the Giannis's of the world when you talk about the best foreign players, the best European players to be playing this game in the NBA. And that's what it feels like this opportunity is here in Eurobasket, this specific matchup with Serbia and a possible second matchup with Serbia further down the line to be able to make it to one of the medal games. Certainly feels like this is that opportunity for Alp, and based on how he's been playing, I think he's going to come out and absolutely take it to Jokic. He's got the playoff experience now. He's dealt with, you know, the Warriors in a playoff environment back in the NBA this past season. So, you know, this matchup with Jokic should be, it should come as no surprise to anybody if he goes out there and potentially plays better than the best player in the world. That's the kind of trajectory that he's on right now. Again, I'm not going to get too caught up in the hype. I'm not going to say too much. I want to do all this work and then they turn around and lay an egg against Serbia. That would absolutely suck. I don't think it's going to happen though. I think they match up really well. I think they've been playing out of their mind. Turkiye has an awesome chance to really put Eurobasket on notice and make everybody regret not having them at least in the top 5 of finishing with a gold medal. Like just utter disrespect at the start of the tournament. So with that, I want your thoughts on Turkiye still undefeated in the tournament, how they were able to muscle it out against Estonia, your thoughts on the game, your thoughts on the upcoming matchup against Serbia, the battle between Nikola Jokic and Alperen Sengun, which will certainly be one for the ages, could be an instant classic. Give me all your thoughts on all of that in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets and Locked On Turkiye for everything Houston Rockets and Eurobasket basketball.